Now, for more discussions on the implications of these climate policy reversals, we're joined by Daniel Kreeger, the Executive Director and co-founder of the Association of Climate Change Officers. Good to have you with us again. Thanks for taking time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, this is something. The concern is what the world will be witnessing will be a Trump full-blown war on science and scientists when it comes to monitoring global warming and climate change. What do you see happening?
I mean, look, to be honest, we've seen this playbook before. In 1981, the U.S. Department of Transportation tried to reopen rulemaking involving seatbelts and airbags. We thought we had that down and tried to repeal rules that showed a very, very clear connection between safety restraints and people's health on the road. And it wasn't until 3 years later when the insurance industry sued the automotive manufacturers industry that the court stepped in and put a stop to that. I think you're probably looking at the same thing. The Supreme Court ruled in Massachusetts versus EPA during the Bush administration, so nearly 18 years ago, that EPA had no reasoned explanation for its refusal to decide whether greenhouse gases caused or contributed to climate change, and indicated in that ruling that within the plain meaning of the Clean Air Act, that they needed to be regulated if EPA determined that their emissions caused or contributed to air pollution, and that air pollution endangered public health or welfare. So 2 years later, EPA did just that. Okay. So this administration is trying to repeal that to undo that, which sets the tone for using the Clean Air Act to regulate.
I'm sure a lot of people listening right now say, okay, that was the Supreme Court back then. This is a new Supreme Court, one that people argue is arguably in Donald Trump's back pocket. So what's the strategy behind dismantling both the science and infrastructure, climate satellites, and environmental regulations? Does it all come down to money? I mean, because this seems incredibly short-sighted.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I don't think this is about budget cuts at this point, because candidly,
I mean, for automakers to make more money by not having to follow rules. That's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, look, every effort to regulate greenhouse gases under the Obama administration using the Clean Air Act was ultimately fought off, with the one exception basically being the clean air rules for automotive. And clearly this administration is using this tactic to fight that particular cause, which is to remove the requirements that the automotive manufacturers have cleaner fleets.
Okay, so the EPA wants to revoke the 2009 endangerment finding that carbon dioxide harms human health, the foundation of all federal climate rules. What would this mean for the United States' ability to address climate change? And secondly, what does it do to the U.S. reputation globally? Could it get any worse?
I think that reputation is kind of going to be what it's going to be throughout this administration. The rest of the world can't be looking at this administration and seeing it as a serious partner in addressing greenhouse gases. Whether or not it can expect this administration to be a resource on resilience in a not focused on climate change, but more focused on disasters is maybe a different story, but those are different discussions as well.
Wow. Okay, what about EV tax credits eliminated? California's emission standards revoked, federal tailpipe rules gutted. How's this going to affect American automakers who are competing basically in a global clean vehicle market? Every other nation in the world is focusing on EVs. Trump says, let's bring coal back.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the automotive industry, the automotive makers who decide to change course for the short term are going to be harmed, because the amount of time it takes to advance technologies and put a product on the road is decadal. So any sort of pivot for them really doesn't make sense. When we look at, for example, electric utilities, I don't think we're going to see a huge difference there. Candidly, the utilities have been migrating over time away from coal because it just, from a business standpoint, doesn't make sense. Yeah. There are cheaper alternatives there, irrespective of the regulatory activities.
Interesting. Okay, one thing China and the United States had gotten along with, despite their divisions over the last decade or so, was climate. Not so. Now, Europe just launched its microcarb satellite last week for precise carbon dioxide monitoring, and China has had 2 carbon tracking satellites operational since last year. So other countries outside the U.S. are going to be responsible and really take the mantle and run with it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, every time we take a step back from leadership, we're basically enabling others to take that role and benefit from it. And what we're seeing already, for example, is China's automotive industry in the EV space has, and companies like BYD are just advancing really, really fast. So U.S. automotive makers are only going to be hurt by this in the long run, and we see the same thing happening in the clean energy industries as well.
Interesting. These changes are going to face a lot of public comment periods and likely lawsuits. Is there the possibility that these changes won't go through?
I don't love where I see the U.S. Supreme Court overturning some of its past precedent. It wouldn't surprise me at this point if they go back on Massachusetts versus EPA with some sort of new case filing and move on that. I also believe 5 to 10 years down the road, we're going to be right back here in the same position, reverting once again. The science is really clear. There's no peer-reviewed science that's going to factually support what this administration is trying to do. Inevitably, they may win short term, but in the long run, the policy is going to have to go back in this direction.